Hello, and welcome to ASMR Ghost Stories. If you enjoy getting just a little scared with stories about incidences that are strange but true, or stories about the paranormal, all told in either soft spoken or whispered, welcome. You've come to the right channel, so put your headphones on to experience the brain tingles. And we're going to go ahead and dive right into the story after you subscribe and hit the notification bell. I upload twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. And also I'm taking the chance of doing this story with the dogs in the room, and they like to make noises, so if you hear that in the background, just know I'm being comforted by my doggies. And they make a lot of noises. Vampires. Is there any truth behind the tales of the undead? The myth of the vampire is a very old one, dating back to ancient Egypt and Greece. Today, in our well-lit, sprawling cities, there is no place for such a legend, except in horror films and the books of the American fantasy novelist Anne Rice. Vampires are just figments of the imagination, the boogeymen of gullible rural peasants who lived in a bygone superstitious age. At least, that's what common sense leads us to believe. Even my dog is so loud and gross at the same time. He's making all kinds of noises. My apologies. Okay, I digress. Let's continue. At least that's what common sense leads us to believe. But even in modern times, Dracula-like beings continue to be reported. Shortly before midnight on June the 8th, 1993, over 1,000 people turned up at a cemetery in Pisco, Peru, in the hope of witnessing the resurrection of an alleged vampire named Sarah Ellen Roberts. Local historians and officials from the British Embassy had recently been shocked to learn that the corpse of Mrs. Roberts had been brought to Pisco from Blackburn, England, by her husband, John Roberts, in 1913, because British authorities refused to let him bury his wife in England, as they believed her to be a vampire. Mr. Roberts dismissed this as absurd, but subsequently bought a lead-lined coffin for his deceased wife and allegedly roamed the world for 4 years, seeking out a country that would allow him to bury her. Finally, Mr. Roberts came to Peru, where he was allowed to inter his wife at Pisco for the sum of £5. Shortly after the ad hoc burial service, Mr. Roberts boarded a ship for England and was never heard of again. Then the news from England reached Pisco. Sarah Ellen Roberts had been bound in chains and shut up in the lead-lined coffin after being found guilty of witchcraft, murder, and vampirism. Just before the lid of the coffin was screwed down, the Lancashire witch had screamed she would return from the grave to seek vengeance. The Peruvian peasants in the town trembled at the news, and 80 years later, in June 1993, people witnessing a grave in the Pisco Cemetery were terrified when they witnessed a large crack appearing in the headstone of the Blackburn woman's grave. That night, over 1,000 thrill seekers and occultists descended on the graveyard when the word went round that the vampire would rise from her grave at midnight. Hundreds of local women left the town to prevent the vampire being reincarnated in their newborn children, and cloves of garlic and crucifixes festooned the front doors of almost every house in the region. When midnight arrived, the vampire mania reached a peak, and police had to be called in to control the hysterical crowds. Shots were fired in the air, and slowly the crowds dispersed. A small group of local witch doctors were apparently allowed to stay at the controversial grave, where they splashed the cracked headstone with holy water and sprinkled white rose petals around. The English vampire did not rise, and the witch doctors later celebrated their success at laying the undead woman to rest. Such superstitious mumbo-jumbo is excusable in a remote Peruvian town, but there have also been a number of vampire alerts in the bustling metropolis of London. The first scare occurred in the spring of 1922 when an enormous black bat-like creature with a wingspan of 6 feet was seen flying around West Drayton Church during the night of a full moon. Several terrified witnesses watched the creature dive into the churchyard, where it roamed the tombs. When it was chased by 2 policemen, the creature let out a loud, blood-curdling screech, flapped its wings, and soared skyward. An old man who claimed he had seen the giant bat 25 years previously maintained that it was the spirit of a vampire who had murdered a woman by drinking her blood in Harmondsworth in the 1890s. No one took the oldster's tale seriously. Later that month, on the morning of April the 16th, at around 6 a.m., an office clerk on his way to work was walking down Coventry Street in London's West End. As he strolled into a turning off the street, that doesn't sound right, does it? Let me read that sentence again. As he strolled into a turning off the street, that sentence is kind of weird, but you get what I'm saying. Something invisible to his eyes seized him and pierced his neck. The man felt blood being drawn, then fell to the pavement unconscious. He woke up in Charing Cross Hospital, where the surgeons who quizzed him said someone must have stabbed him with a thin tube. But the victim disagreed. He was absolutely certain that no one had been close enough to deliver such a thrust. 2.5 hours later, something incredible happened, which still defies explanation. A second man was brought to the same hospital. He too was bleeding profusely from the lower neck, and when he regained consciousness, he also told how he had been attacked by an invisible being while walking down Coventry Street, on the very same corner where the office worker had been struck down. Later that evening, a third victim of the assailant was admitted to the hospital. The The doctors at Charing Cross were absolutely dumbfounded when the police told them that the latest victim had been stabbed at precisely the same spot as the other two casualties at a turning off Coventry Street. As investigation into the bizarre crimes was launched as rumors of a vampire at large in London swept the capital, the news hounds of Fleet Street pricked up their ears at the stories. The Daily Express reported the sinister Coventry Street assaults and asked the police if they had any theories on the strange crimes. A police spokesman reluctantly admitted that the injuries sustained by the three men defied rational explanation, and that they had made no headway in finding the bloodthirsty attacker. With his tongue placed firmly in his cheek, a reporter asked the spokesman if the police had considered the theory of the Coventry Street attacker being a vampire. The spokesman just chortled nervously and said, "That's all." Another rumor then swept the city that the Coventry Street vampire had been cornered by the police and killed by a professional vampire hunter who had been drafted in for the job. Furthermore, the bloodsucker had been secretly interred with a wooden stake through its heart in a deep vault in Highgate Cemetery. The rumor was traced to a pub in Covent Garden where an off-duty policeman had told the landlord of his part in the vampire hunt that had stretched across London. It is, of course, easy to dismiss the policeman's yarn of bunkrum. I've never heard that word before, bunkrum. But by a strange coincidence, London's second vampire scare took place at Highgate Cemetery 48 years after the Coventry Street episode. Highgate Cemetery was founded in 1836 when the London Cemetery Company purchased 17 acres of land in the north of the city. The company's gardener was something of a horticultural genius who transformed the purchased acreage into a breathtaking and peaceful oasis of greenery, with tree-lined avenues, shrubs, and meandering pathways. But there were problems ahead. The outbreak of World War I deprived the cemetery of labor, and the number of plots for sale had dropped to double figures. Furthermore, cremation was also emerging as a popular alternative to burial. With insufficient funds for its upkeep, the cemetery was neglected, and the shrubbery and wildflowers were overtaken by weeds which enshrouded the tombs and gravestones by the score. The Vandals arrived, invading the wilderness of the abandoned cemetery and daubing their names and profanities on the tombs. In December 1969, a group of occultists prowled the forsaken dormitory of the dead, painting voodoo symbols on a number of gravestones and chanting incantations in the hope of resurrecting a corpse. Urban myth has it that the occultists broke into a tomb and disturbed something that sent them running for their lives. An 8-foot wiry figure, clad entirely in black, which emerged from a hole in a tomb that led to the catacombs. The fleeing necromancers scaled the railings of the cemetery and leapt to safety. One of them looked back as he raced down Swain's Lane and saw the man in black reaching through the railings at him with a long, bony arm. The next alleged sighting of the Highgate vampire occurred in January of 1970 when a motorist from Milton Park was driving down Swain's Lane near the entrance of the cemetery when the engine of his car started to sputter. The man pulled into a parking space, and as he lifted the bonnet, noticed an abnormally tall, shadowy figure peering at him through the entrance gates of the cemetery. The motorist was so terrified of the apparition that he ran off without closing the bonnet of his car. The vampire rumors gained substance over the following months, with several more macabre encounters which attracted the attention of the media. An Essex schoolteacher, appropriately named Alan Blood, organized a mass vampire hunt for Friday, March 13th, 1970. Mr. Blood was interviewed on television, and the London Evening News ran a front-page story on him. Blood said he thought that the Highgate vampire had been driven from his lair in the cemetery by the crowds of sensationalists who kept an all-night vigil near the tomb where the vampire was frequently seen. The schoolteacher's plan was to wait until dawn, when the first rays of the rising sun would force the vampire to return to his subterranean den in the catacombs. Then he would kill the satanic creature in the time-honored tradition by driving a wooden stake through its heart. On the night of Friday the 13th, hundreds of people stormed Highgate Cemetery carrying flame and electric torches, crucifixes, scarlet cloves, sharp wooden stakes. But by dawn on the following morning, there was no sign of the vampire, and some thought that the irresponsible rowdy mob had scared the creature off. By the morning light, 9,000 pounds worth of damage had been caused, and in an orgy of desecration, the rampaging crowd had exhumed the remains of a woman from a tomb, stolen lead from coffins, and defaced sepulchres with mindless graffiti. In September of that year, police apprehended a Mr. David Ferrant, a self-appointed vampire hunter, as he scaled the wall of Highgate Cemetery armed with a cross and a wooden stake. The police took him to court, but Mr. Ferrant was released on a technicality. The vampire hunter evidently sent shivers up the magistrate's spine with his final remark to the court. Quote, "The Highgate vampire has to be destroyed. He is evil." End quote. Mr. Ferrant later told press reporters that he had seen the vampire on several occasions and described it as a gangly figure of about 8 feet in height. He believed the vampire slept by day in the catacombs beneath Highgate. Some students of the occult believe the whole vampire myth is just a fictitious yarn that has snowballed out of hysteria, but many of the people who allegedly saw the Highgate fiend say it was real and not the result of some mass hallucination. Today, Highgate Cemetery is open to the public. In its eastern cemetery, you will find the tomb of Karl Marx near the grave of Sid Vicious of the notorious Sex Pistols punk rock band. The western cemetery is only open for guided tours. Another vampire was said to be at large in England's picturesque Lake District in 1900. In January of that year, a Captain Edward Fisher left Crocklin Grange, a bleak, glorified granite brick farmhouse in Cumbria, and headed south to Guildford, where he had purchased a new residence for business purposes. The new residents of Crocklin Grange were Fisher's godsons, Edward and William Cranswell, and their 19-year-old sister, Amelia, who had jumped at the opportunity of taking up the 7-year lease on the secluded but beautifully located property. The trio were popular with neighbors and seemed to be settling in well in their new home. But in the first summer at Crocklin Grange, which was infernally hot, Amelia found it difficult to sleep at night. She would lie in her stifling bedroom gazing out at the moonlit nightscape beyond the windows. One night she opened the window and she was staring out into the darkness when she suddenly noticed the silhouette of a lanky, bony figure darting across the moonlit lawn. Within seconds, the agile, sinister-looking stranger was scaling the wall below her. So she slammed the window shut and fastened its catch. Almost paralyzed with fear, Amelia retreated from the window. As she listened to the figure scrambling up the wall, she sat on the end of the bed, trying to shout out to her brothers, but found she could hardly raise her voice. Then suddenly the figure was at the window. At close range, she could see it was grotesque. Its eyes yellowed and shriveled, with dark circular sockets for eyes. The nose was long and pointed, and the mouth, which was unusually large, showed a set of pointed, gruesome-looking teeth. The creature's bony finger scratched at the window as it picked away the lead lining of a pane. The pane rattled, then fell out, and the ghoul reached in through the hole and undid the window catch. It opened the window and bolted across the room towards its terrified prey. Amelia collapsed onto the bed in a state of sheer terror, where the skeletal freak seized her by the hair and held her still as he bit into her neck. Fearing she would be killed, Amelia somehow summoned up enough courage to let out a scream, which sent her brothers running into her room. They caught a glimpse of the nimble intruder leaping out the bedroom through the window. They ran downstairs, unbolted the door, and pursued the wiry assailant across the lawn and over the neighboring churchyard wall, where they lost sight of him. William and Edward stood staring into the darkness for a while, then returned to their traumatized sister. When they saw the crimson fang marks on her neck, they knew that was no ordinary intruder that had been in her bedroom, but they could not believe the assailant had been a vampire. One night in the following March, the creature returned to Crocklin Grange during a severe gale. As the winds howled across the barren landscape outside, the bony finger was once again at work, removing a pane from Amelia's bedroom window. But this time, the moaning gale swamped the sound of the scratching finger. The teenager awoke and found the vampire leaning over her, and as its cold and clammy hands grabbed her neck, she screamed. Her two brothers burst into the room armed with pistols. The vampire left his prey and attacked the brothers, but Edward opened fire, blasting a hole in the bloodthirsty stalker's thigh. Apparently unaffected by the gunshot, the Cumbrian vampire turned and literally dived through the window. The chase was on again, but this time the brothers saw where the creature went to ground in an old family vault in the churchyard. The brothers alerted the local villagers, and on the following morning, over 70 people gathered around the vault that was said to be the vampire's lair. William, Edward, and 3 brave villagers lifted the large sandstone slab and peered into the darkness. A torch was lit, and the crowd beheld the disturbing scene of 4 broken coffins and their mutilated corpses. A 5th coffin in the corner was intact. The crowd drew back in fear as the brothers lifted the lid to reveal the same hideous creature that had attacked their sister twice at Crocklin Grange. The corpse even bore the recent mark of a pistol shot in its thigh. One of the villagers stepped forward and told the brothers that he too had seen the same creature of the night attacking and killing livestock. He said the only way to destroy a vampire was with fire. So he and the 2 brothers took the creature out into the churchyard, and after the villagers had gathered enough wood, the vampire was burned on a bonfire. And there you have it. Interesting. I've been to England a few times and have gone on some tours, and I've driven through the Lake District. Beautiful place though, but I've had some creepy encounters while in London. Not bad, but enough to say what the world's going on, but never encountered a vampire. So if you enjoyed this story, comment below. If you have any stories of other vampires or books that you would like me to read, like little short stories or snippets, comment below, or you can email me. And until then, I hope everybody stays just a little bit scared. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I do upload twice a week, once on Monday and once on Thursday. I don't know if y'all can hear it, but in the background my dog is snoring like crazy. Let me be quiet for just a second, just see if you can hear it. He's a little tiny guy, but boy, he makes up for it in personality and snoring. So thank you guys for listening, and until next time, you know what to do. Stay just a little scared.